Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an expert in the art of public relations, an author from Wiltshire, UK, Mr. Jim A. James. Jim, welcome to the show.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for hosting me on the show.
Thank you.
What an incredible record you've got with The Brand Called You.
Thank you. Jim is the champion of the Unnoticed Entrepreneur. He's the chairman of EASTWEST Public Relations. He's an author, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled The Unnoticed Entrepreneur, and he's a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. So, Jim, before we start talking public relations and your book, from growing up across 3 continents to launching EastWest PR in Singapore, what were some key personal experiences that shaped your entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, one of the first things that happened to me was having my feet dangled out of an aeroplane at about 7 in the morning, and it was a cold, chilly British spring. And I wasn't sure if I could do it because I was afraid of heights, but I jumped out of an aeroplane.
Wow.
Yeah, I needed to go to Australia from the UK. Family didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough money. And I was working selling toys for about £2.58 an hour back in those days. And I knew I would never reach my goal of getting to Australia if I kept on working by the hour.
Right.
So I took on this challenge, jumped out of an airplane and raised more money in that 2 minutes than I was going to do 6 months working for anybody else.
Wow.
And that really was my introduction to, working for myself and creating something from nothing and becoming an entrepreneur. So that was my first real venture at the age of 17. So that set me up then for the next sort of part of life.
What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing this. And what was it like being a foreign entrepreneur in China, especially in the automotive and public relations sectors?
Right. So we sort of fast forwarded a little bit there. So I went to Singapore in 1995 at the age of 27 to start EastWest Public Relations, which, by the way, is still going now. And I sold that business to a couple of young Singapore and Malaysian entrepreneurs. So that's brilliant. Moved to China in 2006 to start the PR firm. And then we imported the world's first Morgan car to China. And people liked the car. And I had a background in PR. And so I took a couple of orders and then approached the factory and said, hey, who's selling these cars? Because I've got a couple of orders. They said, nobody is. And I said, well, I'll do it for you.
Wow.
Yeah, it took us about 12 months. We had to go through 13 different ministries to be approved for various homologation and finance and so on. And then set about building a traditional British brand, over 100-year-old brand, into one of the newest and largest car markets. Self-funded. We were the only sort of self-appointed entrepreneurs who were importing cars, the only foreigners importing cars as well. My wife and I, she's from Shanghai. We built the business up. We had 3 then sub-dealers, and we imported 75 cars over the next 8 years. So it was an amazing experience in building a brand from scratch and all out of cash flow.
And which brand was this, if you can share it?
Yeah, it's called Morgan Motor Company.
The MG, is it?
Morgan is one of the oldest established privately held car companies. Yeah, they look like 1930s sports cars because actually the design has stayed the same since then.
Amazing. So let's talk about public relations. You have spent a lifetime building public relations, and I probably understand it better than a lot of other people do. And my first question for you, Jim, is what role has PR played in every business that you have built? And how early should an entrepreneur think about public relations?
So for me, ever since jumping out of that airplane at the age of 17, PR has been the best way to get noticed because it is free. You can get media coverage without expense. And what you're really doing is you're borrowing the credibility and the authority of that media that you're in. So you get reach as well.
Yeah.
When I jumped out of the airplane, what I did was I went to a local newspaper and I got them to cover my jumping out of an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a local shop and asked them if I got them into the newspaper, would they give me free equipment? And they
Mm-hmm.
agreed.
Mm.
So I'd already learned by that age that you can arbitrage your story for exposure, because the
Mm.
media are trying to get subscriptions, circulation, advertising.
Yeah.
And that's what we all have as entrepreneurs. So as
Mm.
entrepreneurs, we all have amazing stories, as you do, Ashutosh, with your career and now with what you're doing as a published author and a podcast host and entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs can use PR because they all have stories about why they're starting the business,
Yeah.
what problem they're trying to solve, who it is that they are serving,
Yeah.
and importantly, which problems that they have overcome in order to get their business up and running, and the trials and tribulations that we all have as entrepreneurs. When should you start? My view is that you start your public relations as soon as you start your business, if not beforehand.
Correct.
Because you start to get some exposure for your business. People that might want to become customers can start to sign up. People that might want to become partners can start to approach you. But also what happens when you go into the market, you're not just going in with a, hi, this is me, you've never heard of me. If you could walk into the room and people say, hey, I read about you or I heard about you, you've already established a rapport. So start media relations and PR the moment you've got an idea for your business.
Very well said. And how do you define, or how do you differentiate between publicity and public relations in today's digital world?
That's a tough one. So publicity really is about getting some awareness or some profile, but public relations is about building a reputation over time. So you can have publicity for a one-off event. You can have publicity. Sometimes it's negative publicity. Okay. So that is just kind of the event in itself. But public relations, the key is in the word relations and the relationship that you're building, because it's what we want people to understand and know about us.
Right.
And that takes time more than just one event. So think of PR as a long-term strategy and publicity as a short-term milestone.
And what would you say are some of the components of a successful PR strategy?
First of all, having a big idea. A big idea that will engage your audience, and the media really are your channel to get that story to the audience. So too many companies, especially big ones, think PR is just about sending out what they want to say to the media, and the media will send it to the audience. They might leverage the media to do that, but then the audience isn't really interested.
Yeah.
So the first thing to think about is, what's my story? How am I different? What am I going to do that's going to engage the viewer, reader, listener? The next part of PR is having a plan over time. Ashutosh, so many entrepreneurs think that PR is kind of like just a product launch and that's it. Actually, it could be a product launch, but then it could be a story about the founder. It could be a story about where the materials come from, for example, if it's something that's being made. It's the consistent delivery of information that builds out the full picture of that story over time. So have a great, compelling story, and make sure that you tell it consistently. And what I like to say in my email signatures is keep on communicating, because people wait until they think they've got something big to share.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like having a friend who only calls you maybe once a year when they want to tell you they've, got a job promotion or maybe done something. Actually, you want a relationship with that person, so you hear about them every day and every year and every month, just like a family or a friend member. So think about PR as being something that you're building over time.
Well said. But, in today's world of so much content, what would make a PR pitch stand out?
Another great question. Authenticity now is becoming the key, actually, to standing out, because there's this avalanche of AI content, which a lot of it looks and reads the same, because of course the genesis of that content is everybody else's content. what we're now looking at is going to human stories, human interest. In fact, it's always been this way, Ashutosh. It's always been this way about humans and getting people in front of humans. But a PR campaign that's going to succeed and bind is going to be one that really reaches out to people. But there's another dimension to this, and it's actually called the cascade theory. And the cascade theory says that when you share information, it has to be easy for someone else to understand. And B, it has to be novel so that they feel that they could share it with somebody else and feel as though they've done some good. So it needs to be simple and show a point of difference. And that's when we find things go viral, Ashutosh. When someone shares a post on LinkedIn or Instagram, people say, oh, I understand it, and I can see how it might help others. So those are two really key components.
Fascinating. Great response. And from the perspective of an entrepreneur, what does getting noticed really mean? And how can they achieve this?
Every individual, in fact, Ashutosh, needs what is called thymos, right? Thymos is this fundamental desire that I write about in my book. In fact, I have 3 books now. And it's the fundamental need for recognition that we have as humans. But of course, companies need recognition, because without recognition, we don't get clients, customers, and we don't have then cash flow. So recognition as an entrepreneur means that your idea is validated, that people are taking you seriously and they're willing to do business with you, either, short term or long term. And as a business, we need that in order to grow. So why is it important? Because long term, all entrepreneurs are trying to make a difference, right? Like you're doing with your podcast and with your 9 books. Entrepreneurs, by definition, all see something that could be better in the world. And the only way we can make a difference in the world is if other people have seen, heard, and experienced what we've created. And that's why getting noticed matters. We need it as individuals, but also we need it because that fulfills our higher purpose, which is to leave the world a better place than we found it.
Amazing. When I was growing up, we were always taught, I'm talking of now the early 80s, that you always give bad news on a Friday and a good news on a Monday, because that's the way the papers used to function. But my question to you is, in today's digital media, what are some of the common mistakes you have seen startups make when it comes to PR?
When it comes to mistakes for startups, too many of them wait for one big piece of news and they think it's got to be perfect. And yet, I've interviewed over 400 entrepreneurs on my show. Obviously, you've got an amazing catalog, but I've interviewed entrepreneurs and how they get noticed for free.
Wow.
And the common success factors are where they engage their audiences straight away and on an everyday basis. Even if it's taking Instagram reels of themselves delivering products to people or asking people on the street what they think, or filming themselves in the office. So the mistake that entrepreneurs make is they think it has to be perfect and they wait until they think they've got a big announcement. But actually, what we want to do is to build a relationship with the audience on the journey of building the business. And actually, that's now, as we know, really what gets clients, consumers, investors excited about what you're doing with your company.
Fascinating. And how does one build relationships with a journalist or a media professional without being too pushy?
Right. Well, it starts really with understanding that individual on the other end of the phone, email, has a lot of work to do. Regardless of the size of the media, they're probably getting 10 to 20, 30 even pitches a day. So you have to recognize, first of all, they're super, super busy. Second, you have to understand their job is to drive readership, which will bring either subscriptions or advertising. They only have 2 things to do there. And most people that pitch to journalists think that they're the only person that's ever pitched the journalist and that their story is the most important. And they lose track of the fact that they've got to appeal to at least a third, if not half, of the readers of that publication or viewers. So the first thing that I always suggest to people is to read the publication, listen to the podcast, watch the news, and find out what that journalist is already writing about.
Right.
And then your pitch is tying what they're currently writing about or speaking about in with your story. We call it, it's like a version of semantic sequencing where you start your sentence with the end of someone else's,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So if you want to reach a journalist,
Mm.
the pitch can be, hey, I saw you've been writing about X, Y, and Z. I fit in with Z. I thought your article was great, but I could add some value for your readers by bringing this perspective or this idea. So that would be really, it's in the same way you build a relationship with anybody. You go in to listen first, and then you try and find a way to add value to their lives.
What a great response. Thank you. Couple of more questions relating to PR, and then I want to move to your book. How should a bootstrapped entrepreneur go about a do-it-yourself PR strategy, especially when budgets are very, very tight?
Budgets are extremely tight for everybody, almost by definition, aren't they? So
Yeah.
when it comes to PR, you have earned media, of course, which is where you go to a magazine or a media. What I would say is start with the smallest publications first. Okay. People make the mistake of thinking they've got to be in the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or the India Times, right? You don't start there. Just in the same way that if you're an athlete, you'd play or you'd run in local races, and then you'd go to, maybe a provincial town and then provincial, then national, then you aim for the Olympics. Get a small local publication on your side first, because once you've got into that publication, you can use that piece of credibility to leverage the next one. And also you refine your story, you refine your pitch. So I would say for media relations, start local, start small and build a relationship. And if you can, offer to take that journalist for lunch, tea, coffee, Tay-Tarek, whatever it is, and ask them what kind of stories that they would like. But start small and build. Don't worry about getting into the top tier first.
Amazing advice. Thank you. One more question, and everyone is now, the whole world is talking of storytelling. Everyone's a storyteller. What is the role of storytelling in PR, and how can founders learn to tell their stories better?
Well, stories, as we know, are how humans understand situations, because stories enable us to associate facts and figures and places in a way that plugs into our received wisdom, right? Because we can't possibly give someone everything that they need to know. So stories become almost like shorthand for us to communicate what was going on. The good news is everybody has a story, Ashutosh, right? That's what's fascinating. Although it's become trendy to talk about stories, though it never existed. Actually, we've all had stories and we've all been storytellers as kids. We just kind of somehow got it knocked out of us by having to use PowerPoint or by doing Word documents. So the message there is you have a story. Don't worry about trying to find one. What's key, though, about the story is that you articulate it in 60 seconds or less, that you can build a relationship with someone that might find that of interest to build a longer relationship. So the story's role is not to communicate everything about what you do. It's to start the conversation, if that makes sense, right? So hence I jumped out of an aeroplane. I have others, like I drove a car into the Forbidden City before the police arrived. You can choose different stories depending on the context of the situation, okay? So please, anyone that's listening to this, don't be stressed out about the need to find a big story. We all have stories, and we can use them on a daily basis in tactical and strategic ways.
Very interesting. Thank you. Let's now talk about your book, Jim, The Unnoticed Entrepreneur. And, as I was reading the title, and then I was looking at you as the quintessential PR person, I was wondering about this contradiction of public relations, which needs to be noticed, and the unnoticed entrepreneur. Tell me the story behind the name Unnoticed Entrepreneur.
Right. I'm happy to do that. So I actually have now 3 books under the brand The Unnoticed Entrepreneur, sponsored and actually published by Wiley, the New York listed publishing
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And Ashutosh, you know, what happened was I started to explain PR, and I had a podcast and I called it Speak PR. And I was having a conversation with a business coach, and he said, well, really, Jim, the problem is that no one really is that interested in learning how to do PR. What they all want to do is to get noticed.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I changed the name of my books and my podcast and my brand to be in the name of the avatar. Who do I want to talk to? And that's the Unnoticed Entrepreneur.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was where it came from, because actually people were less interested in the how. I wanted to resonate with the audience that I'm trying to help. So hence then moving that into the champion of the Unnoticed Entrepreneur, where really the whole idea is to help to reassure all those amazing people that are building businesses that they can build brands with next to no budget, and they can get noticed for what they do.
Very interesting. Could you, for my viewers and listeners, share one or two of your favorite stories or lessons from the entrepreneurs featured in the book?
I can. So there's a chap called Akshay who is in India, and he got stuck during lockdown, and he's a photographer, and weddings got stopped, obviously, during COVID, and he was really running out of money. And this is a great tale of being resourceful rather than having resources. And what he did was every day for 365 days, he took a picture of himself in his room, and he made a portrait of himself in 365 different ways. Incredible attention to detail. At the end of that, he had a calendar, and then he published his pictures. And of course, once people came out of lockdown, they'd watched him every day assembling, creating, and making montages and profiles. So I love Akshay's story because A, he's a wonderful chap, but also because it was a classic example that he loves so much what he does that he was going to do that even if he wasn't going to get paid. And in a way that's a great emblem for all entrepreneurs who are great. Okay. I think another slightly different one would be from Melissa Snova. This is a slightly different one. She's an American woman who lives in the UK, and she has built the world's, I say built, created the world's first 3D gummy bears, which are vitamins. The reason I love her story is because it's one of innovation and perseverance. So she was at a counter at the airport in Düsseldorf. All of her multivitamins dropped out of her bag at the security clearance. We've all been there, where things come running across the security. And she thought there has to be a better way. She worked in food tech, and then she designed some processes to make the different ingredients that she had in all those tablets into a paste that they could be made into 3D gummy bears. That in itself is innovation, which I love. But the way that she built the brand was genius, because we can all do it. She took her gummy bears to women. She said that's her avatar, you know, women who are mothers. And she had them try them in wherever she could find them, coffee shops, schools. And she took the reviews and she modified the product. But also then what she did was, over the period of the next 2 years, she got 10,000 user reviews. And she used social proof by going out one person at a time to build the brand. And then they leveraged that to be the most highly reviewed new food product category in the UK. And that became a PR story. And now, fast forward now 3 years, she has opened outlets for her product in Japan. So Melissa Snova Nourished, she's one of 50 stories in volume 3 of the book. And each volume of the book has these amazing stories like Akshay. And, you know, people ask me the favorites. Everyone, as you know, because every entrepreneur has got a wonderful story of passion and perseverance.
Amazing. So time for two more questions for you. You talk about systems and tools in your book. What are the most underrated tools to get noticed?
Ooh, in this day and age, Ashutosh, the video has to be the most underrated. And that is just using your phone. And that people may not like how they sound, look, hear, but actually people would like to connect. And we've all seen viral videos that are not polished or highly produced. In fact, the largest companies get the worst take up when it comes to video and going viral. So I think that's probably the first one, the most underused and most, if you like, easy to use would be the video. And sorry, what was the second one?
No, and what I said, you talk about systems and tools in the book. What are the most underrated tools to get noticed?
Yes. So I think that's the first one would be the video. And the second one is actually, and you're going to laugh because you and I would wonder about this, but is the phone call.
Correct.
Because when I grew up and I started my business in 1995 in Singapore, we only had the phone, right? But then we had, and ironically enough, of course, it's coming back to the benefit of actually making a phone call.
Correct.
And tracking down someone's phone number and saying, hi, you may be surprised by getting a phone call, but actually, I'd like to build a relationship with you. So video, because that gives you what I call personalization at scale.
Yeah.
You know, people can see you, and personalization at scale is one of the themes. But the phone call builds the intimacy and the relationship. And statistics show that people that hear back from someone within the first 2 hours are 80% more likely to do business with that person. So, for example, if you're doing outreach or if you're doing, responses, to make sure that your phone call to people is timely. And that's the other dimension of it. It's not just about making a video or making a phone call when you like. It's not really a system or a tool, but it's a practice. And another defining piece from all of my interviews has been the need for speed to respond to either existing or potential clients quickly. And so we've got video, we've got phone calls, and we've got speed.
Fascinating. And my last question for you, what is one mindset shift you hope readers will walk away with after reading your books?
When they read The Unnoticed Entrepreneur 1, 2, and 3, published by Wiley, I hope the mindset shift is one of confidence. That there are entrepreneurs that have been in similar situations to them, who have made a phone call, who've taken a gummy bear to a coffee shop, who have delivered beer to a house, that it starts with us taking the first phone call step. And every entrepreneur's story starts small.
Correct.
And that's why I interview people that are not celebrities, because I'd like people that read or listen or watch The Unnoticed Entrepreneur to know that they're not alone, and that their journey can be a success, and that other people have walked down that path and are there to help them.
Amazing. And on that note, Jim, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. I think just speaking to you has been such an amazing experience. Your stories, from jumping out of the plane to discovering your entrepreneurial skills when you were 17 years, to a fascinating conversation on public relations. I think we covered some amazing ground on PR strategy, on publicity and public relations, and some of the mistakes, on how you can bootstrap a PR strategy, to talking about your 3 books, The Unnoticed Entrepreneur, Volume 1, 2, and 3. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.